you guys want to move up because the front row's empty, and I think it would be a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Just at least one or two people.
Everyone, I like that people pretend they're like, they shift a little bit. They're like, hopefully someone else moves. I know, I do that all the time. Oh my God, it's on.
I know, that's much better. Thank you guys. All right, I'm Tobias. This is Will, and this is Matt, and Janira is over there making sure everything runs smoothly in our AV booth. And together, we have a number of curious and exciting topics to share with you.
As attendees of the Hand I Supply Curiosity Club, you're all now members, provided you adhere to our philosophy.
Ex Curiositas Scientia.
We pledge to learn without prejudice in pursuit of our mutual goal, perpetual noviceship. We admit that it is impossible to know everything about anything, and thus we remain perpetually curious and perpetually novice.
This is our flag with our mascot Franklin. The lightning bolt represents received knowledge, the enlightenment of illumination, the resonance of truth understood. It awakens and excites us and makes us hungry for more.
Curiosity Club is made merrier by our fellow artisans at Fort George Brewery in Astoria, Oregon. Here.
All right. So pretty excited with this Curiosity Club. So let's give a warm Curiosity Club welcome to Margaret Jacobsen.
Yay! Yay! Do I just sit here? Is this where I live now? This is mine. I'm Margaret. I feel like it's really hard to explain all the things that I do because I do the most things, and that's like an accident. I just get really excited, so I try to do as much as possible. But my main jobs would be writing and photography. I started with photography. I've never worked like a real job in my life, and I've just been freelancing. And my writing kind of opened up this whole platform to talk about being a parent, being a queer person, being non-binary, and mainly talking about race and raising like Black children in America. And then the other thing that I do aside from my like paid work is I run a discussion community building group called Let's Talk. And that group was born out of this like need and importance to have these really hard conversations in person, because online it was just, there was too much conflict and people were just, I think when I started it was around, it was right after Michael Brown was murdered, and there was this, like, there was so much pain that Black people were experiencing, and I was noticing in my white friends they were struggling to understand it. And so there was all this like arguing while like we're mourning and we're hurting and we're freaking out. And I was like, fuck, this like really sucks, because I feel like the stuff that I'm experiencing is like so real and it's so valid, but none of my white friends can validate me. And I think it was that thing of like having the screen and everyone trying to be logical and play the devil's advocate, which is so unnecessary and so stupid. And so we all, like, the first time Let's Talk met was like it was in a park, and we just sat in this circle, and at first I asked everyone how they were doing. And everyone was like, I'm sad. And then someone just was like, I'm fucking pissed. I'm so angry. And I had this moment, I was like, oh my God, you're gonna make all the white people scared. Which I was like, that's such a bad response. And I was noticing, I was also like feeling this like discomfort. And I was like, this is really good. Like, this is really good. And so we just started this like dialogue. And I was like, we have to keep doing this. This is really important. We need more spaces like this. And so Let's Talk has been going for like a few years, but after Trump was elected, a lot of people showed up to our meeting and they were like, we're ready to do things. And I was like, are you though? Because you all know we've been doing this for a while. And it is like primarily white people. I always tell people of color that it can be so emotionally like draining for them to be in that space. And I do a lot of work to be able to hold this space with white people. Sometimes it feels like it can be abusive in ways, just having the questions asked and just having to answer the same fucking thing over and over and over. And so I'm usually like, if you're a person of color, I'm like, I want you there because I think that that's important, but also like protect yourself, you know? And then white people, I'm like, if you have fucking questions, this is where you need to be. A lot of times people are like, where do I start? Where do I start? I'm like, well, you could Google. You know, there are people on your newsfeed who are constantly sharing GoFundMe pages for people of color who need help. They are sharing articles. So why are we skipping over those things, and why are we not just reading those things and taking it in and then starting to do stuff? And I think when we think of activism and we think of making change, we think of it in this really big way. We think of it in disrupting by like standing in the street, breaking windows, stopping people from going to work. And I think that it's so much more than that. I think it's that, but I also think it's in the conversations. I think it's in creating safe spaces for people who are marginalized. I think it's donating your time, your money, your resources. And usually when people are like, I'm not in that privilege, I don't have money, I have to be like, all right, let me explain to you as a Black, non-binary, queer person the ways I have privilege. And I have lots of privilege, right? I have a house where I have an extra room, I have a car, I can cook food for people, I can give my resources. And so this excuse of like, you don't have time, you aren't capable, you have nothing to give is bullshit. And I draw a line there. When people come to Let's Talk and they're like, this is the most that I can do, I'm like, that's a lie. Like, I watch people do so much more for things that don't matter, that we decide have value. And we've gotten to a point where this like discussion about Black Lives Matter has kind of been like, it's a thing we see all the time now. And we don't really talk about it as much anymore. The other day, I just had to have another conversation with my 7 and 8-year-old about another Black boy that was murdered. And so my reality is so different than a lot of white parents that I share space with. My 7 and 8-year-old, I would say, are a lot more aware than a lot of white folks that I know. And they can handle having a conversation about police and being uncomfortable. They can talk about skin color. They can talk about how it makes them feel. And because of them, I'm just like, well, then I can definitely have these conversations with other adults. And I think it comes down to a choice of choosing to stay in your place of being comfortable, which I think Portland is that kind of place. I think people move here often because it's so easy and comfortable. If you go to other cities, they have to face a lot of stuff that we just like don't have to. Our city has erased a whole culture, multiple cultures that aren't white. We forget that our ties here are very deeply ingrained to the KKK in the same way that it is in the South, but when we think of like racist America, we only think of the South. For some reason, we're like, but the West Coast is cool, everyone's so liberal. Being liberal means nothing. To me, as a person of color, living here, if someone tells me they're liberal, I'm like, that's a red flag, you're a racist. Like, that's just what I think. It doesn't matter what you tell me your political alignment is, I'm like, you're racist. Because that's just like the reality of it. Because we live in America. That's what the structure is. And I just had this conversation with somebody where I was like, talking about being inclusive. And I was like, I just don't know why people pretend that they want to be inclusive and then they're not inclusive. Someone's like, I don't even think that we can use that word anymore. I think that we have to start talking about actually like decolonizing things. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Because when we think of being inclusive, what we think of is still starting at the starting point of whiteness and then including everybody and allowing whiteness to still exist after having taken everything. And when we talk about decolonizing, it's when that whiteness starts to just kind of give back what it has like taken. And when people use this excuse of like, but I'm not a part of slavery, those were my like ancestors, doesn't matter. We are participating in things that uphold white supremacy. And it hurts my brain sometimes when I'm like laying in bed and I'm thinking about it and I'm like, how am I gonna dismantle everything and deconstruct everything? And I start crying and I'm like, it's so hard. And then I have to remember that just these little things, like you all being here tonight, when we do Let's Talk, when I have conversations online, that's where I hold a lot of discussions, when I write articles, those things matter. Those things get talked about. Like you're going to leave here and you're going to think about hopefully really heavy shit. You know, I want you to feel heavy and to just be like, okay, I'm not, I'm done with the thing of like being really inspiring, being like, you can do it. It's like, no, it's gonna take a lot of work and like energy. and it's a choice. And I had a conversation today where I'm at a point in my life where my friendships with white people really come down to how are they showing up for me. And I had like a situation where I spoke at a workshop, and I feel like I'm not a very threatening person. I'm from the Valley in LA, and I feel like I'm super laid back and chill, and I gave this talk, and we were like crying and whatever, and this woman came up to me on the last day, and she's like, I just feel like you could be great if you weren't so divisive, and if you would stop preaching to the choir. You need to bring people together. And I was just like, what? I was like, I didn't even shout at anybody. I shout too, like I can get really, and what had happened is the people at the workshop, I like told them, I was like, you said you wanted to be inclusive. I'm letting you know that I felt really uncomfortable and that person harmed me. And they sided with this white woman, and they were like, she's learning and it's hard, and she cried. And I was like, I fucking cried. And then I got over it because that's my reality. I don't get to stay soft in the same way that this older white woman got to. And everyone feels for her because she's like, it's just so hard to remember pronouns and what's going on with black people. I just don't get it. And I'm like, it's hard for me to be in your spaces all the time and have to defend myself. And that was the thing. And so one of my friends ran the workshop, and I was like, you're my friend. You were supposed to fucking advocate for me, and you couldn't even show up for me in a fucking conversation. I don't think that I need this friendship right now. I have real shit to do, and I need people to be fighting with me. I'm tired. I'm like exhausted. When I came here, I was like, what do I want to talk about? I don't know if I want to like deplete myself talking about really heavy things, but I also like don't know how to not do it anymore. I don't know how to censor myself anymore. It used to be where I would show up places and I would make a choice to be like, I'm gonna let everyone else feel comfortable. But I would just feel so like, oh, you're being so terrible. You're saying such terrible things. But I was like, but everyone else's happiness matters. And then it got to a point where I was like, and why not mine? Like, why not me? Why am I making this choice when they've never even like thought for like a moment about my experience or how this is making me feel? And an example I keep telling people about is when I date, I have to go down this really big list of things because I'm like, I need to know your politics. I need to know how you feel about things. I'm not gonna go on a date and figure it out, and it's like the third date and we're having sex and someone says something super racist and you're like, oh my God, what? You said you were a feminist, and that means nothing. And so I've been talking to, I have two partners, and I was telling, like I have to remind them, I'm like, you know, if you're gonna like date another white person, because they're both white, I'm like, you need to check off all these things. And they're like, maybe we could just go on a date and figure it out. I was like, no, because my safety is really important. And if you're here for me, like you say that you're here for me, it should already be in your mind. And also we have 2 black children involved. And we can't just bring in white people with their like meaning well. Like, I know I've definitely done a thing where I've hurt someone, I'm like, I didn't mean anything. I was trying to be nice. And they're like, yeah, but you still fucking hurt me. And I was like, no, but like you're missing it. I meant well, so it's okay. And I realized how fucked up that was when like people would do that to me, and I was like, I just feel like that microaggression wasn't cool. And they're like, but I meant well when I was like running my hands through your hair. It's not a big deal when I was like rubbing your body after you asked me not to touch you. And so I think like now my ways of disrupting things in my everyday life are just pointing this stuff out to people. In like everything, everywhere I am. I'm probably the worst person to hang out with like on a daily basis. So I just sit in places so loudly, I'm like, what the fuck is that? And people are like, oh no, Margaret's gonna do it again. You know, I'm just getting in people's faces or being like, why would you say that? Why? Why are you saying those things? And they're like, I don't like it's because of racism. You know, and there's other things, sexism is real too. But I think the thing I encounter the most that I focus on is race. That's the thing that comes first for me. And so I think that that is what drives a lot of what I do. Right now, I'm trying really hard to focus on taking care of my other POC organizers and activists because they're hurting. And there's a big like gap here in the city to take care of them. Because we have to give over 100%. We have to create our own spaces. Our spaces get taken away or overrun with white people. And it's that thing where like white people are so used to everything being for them. And we're like, we just want one space, you know? And so we're constantly trying to make these spaces. And it surprises me because when I go into a space, I'm like, is this even for me? And I'm shocked. I watch white people walk into like dance nights, queer dance nights for people of color, and they just act like they own it. And I'm like, this isn't even for you. You aren't even acting respectful. You're not even trying. Why is that? Why is there no like pausing to be like, oh, am I welcome here? Should I check in and make sure that I'm not taking up space? And I got into like a really big debate about like the Solange concert because, I don't know, did everyone hear her last album? That was like for Black people. And I saw a lot of white friends being like, it was such a religious experiment. I was like, or experience, and I was like, why though? It wasn't for you. And they were so offended, and they were like, well, I gave her money, I should be able, and I was like, it's not for you though. You should have made more space for people of color, because think of access. Who usually has more access to those things? White people do. I come from a middle class background, and so I feel like sometimes I even have to catch myself because I'm like, if I can do it, everybody can. And I'm like, no, that's not even true. That's like not even true. Even with all the money that my parents made, there was lots of things that like we were unwelcome in because it didn't matter, we were still Black. So I think what I always come back to is, how do I, in a city that has built this utopia on this idea of creatives come here and you can be really happy and like thrive, where it's basically created a fake place. It's not real. I come from LA. This is not what a city is like at all. This is not normal. It's not normal to walk down the street and have white people completely ignore you and then tell you that they've never seen a person of color here. Even though I can sit on the same corner as a white person and count 10 people of color. This is a city where our streets, Mississippi and Alberta, have no plaques. There's nothing on the buildings telling us about all the people that owned those properties that were all Black. Everyone I know that lives here that is like a fifth like generation Portlander is a Black person or a Native person. It's not a white person. And white people who say they miss like the old Portland, but it was like Portland of 10 years ago, that's really sad. That's when people started to notice that gentrification was even happening, but no one listened. And no one listened until it came to Southeast. And then when like the white person couldn't work their one like small job and make art, all of a sudden gentrification was real. And so it always takes until the more privileged person is suffering for us to pay attention. And that's really bad. And we should stop that thinking before that even happens. Like, we should already be considering everybody. And not considering in the way that you speak for them, considering in a way of like, how do I make space for them to speak for themselves? Because you can never tell my story, and I can never tell someone else's story. I do think that there are so many opportunities here. And I think that people do get kind of overwhelmed at where to show up and what to do. But it only takes like you disrupting certain things of like suggesting, why don't we include this or include this? One of my best friends is a designer in New York, and I tell everybody this. When he gets asked to speak at anything, his email response back is just, this sounds interesting, but how many people of color do you have speaking? How many women of color? How many women? Because I'm not going to take up a space as like a white cis male. Like, everyone knows everything that I'm going to say. You know, he's like, I look like any other fucking white designer. You know, and I think a lot of people are like, I don't know, what? And I get asked to speak at a lot of things where it's primarily men, and they're like, we're trying so hard. It's so hard to find like women and people of color. And I was like, that's so stupid. What? I'm in an industry, in the photography industry, that is primarily women. There hasn't been a lot of space for people of color. And so most of my talks when I work at workshops or teach at them are about that. And about that we are out here, you just haven't tried. And I think in Portland it's really easy to rely on your Instagram to find certain people, and the same fucking like art events where it's the same fucking people and the same like going out at night. It's just the same. And everyone's starting to look the same to me. And I'm not remembering people's names or faces. I'm just like, everyone's just like a big blob of mayonnaise at this point, which is fine. I love mayonnaise. I have to realize that maybe I shouldn't just say that to lots of white people all the time. But I sit in on a lot of conversations where people are like, I just want to make a difference, and I read this book, and I'm just so radical, and I'm such an anarchist, but like they don't actually do anything. Like living in like a punk house and pretending you're poor is like not doing anything to help me. Like it's not. My kids are still like scared of cops, and the cops are still coming out and hurting us. So, I mean, think of other ways. And I think the best way is to listen to the people who are being hurt. Not to suggest things, not to be like, cool, we'll invite this one person of color and they can help us feel really good about ourselves because we did this thing. And so my thing is always like, why not have primarily people of color? Why is it that it's always mostly white people and then maybe some people of color? White people are not our majority anymore. So it doesn't even add up that that would be how the demographic would go, you know? And it makes people feel shitty when you're like, oh, why do you have so many white men speaking? And they're like, we tried, we asked you. And I'm like, you can ask more people. I can ask for you, I'm really good. I have a large network. I can connect anyone with anybody. Like, let me help you. I'm so willing to do that stuff. And when they're like, no, we got it, I'm like, you just made a choice. Like, I watch people making choices. And so I guess the thing that I really want, and we're gonna like have like our own discussion here because I think that that's really important, and it feels shitty to just talk at people. I think it's important to hear what they have to say. But when you leave, I really want you to be thinking about ways that you can disrupt things, little things, literally tiny things, because those things will like grow. And if you like don't do it, I can't be in all of the places that you all can be in. I try to be in a lot of places. I try to show up as much as I can, and I get depleted and I get tired. And then I'm like, I need to leave Portland because this place has no appreciation for people of color. And that's what's happening. People of color leave here all the time because there's no respect or love. There's no care to how they feel. And the way I just phrase it is, so I have depression and I have anxiety. And it's very validating when people let me talk about it and they're like, wow, that sounds really hard, as opposed to being like, think positively. You can think your way out of your depression. And you're like, no, really, my brain is fucked up. I can't do that. And it's the same with like a person of color, a queer person, a trans person is telling you about their experience. You don't get to sit there and be like, this is how you could deal with it. And I cannot tell you how many people tell me how to deal with like how white people treat me when I'm like, wow, they like really hurt me. They're like, well, they were trying, Margaret, and you should just get over it. So I think that validating and disrupting are really important. Those are really important things to be thinking about. And yeah, I'm not gonna feel that sorry that I just kind of maybe disrupted some of your thought process and how you guys operate on a daily basis, because it will hopefully only benefit people like me in the long run. Okay, so I thought we could do a let's talk type discussion. So usually what happens, can they move in their chairs? Can they move the chairs? Is that fine? So usually what would happen is we would sit in like a circle type thing or a half circle so we could see each other. Everybody move. You guys can move. You can, it's fine. Don't be.
Do you want it like in sections or do you?
Yeah, maybe let's do like 2 or 3 rows because it might be too wide. So like, let's say like start here and then another row here. Awesome, you guys are amazing. So much better than like the middle schoolers I usually end up working with. Rad. Also remember there were empty chairs, so we might have just moved chairs for people that don't exist at all. We'll just do this. And so then, this is right. Hi, Susan. Am I good to sit here? Cool, rad. So we would sit like this. At this point in Let's Talk, we have work groups. Our work groups are racial equity, youth, police reform, self-care, and then there's always one I miss. It doesn't matter. Huh? Yes, local politics. So the work groups are people meet in the groups like every other week and then on their own, and it's just focused on how are ways that we can contribute to our community. Because conversations are really important and that's really great, but we have to take it past that. And I would say the thing that we're doing the most of right now is self-care, because we just had May Day. And then there was that march where the Nazis showed up. And so a lot of people of color are feeling really anxious and need a lot of help. So we're setting them up with like body work and stuff like that and meals. So how I would normally start a discussion is I just ask people how they are feeling in like the current climate. And, so how is everybody feeling? You can also say not good. It's fine, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, not good was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I'm just super depressed about the face. I feel like people have absolutely no ability to interact at all anymore, period.
Yeah.
Like in general, like as a society, as a world society, in this country, myself, I'm just like, I've lost all ability to communicate with somebody black, or another white person, or somebody who voted for Trump, like my stepdad.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how I have no tools in my tool bag left. Like, and I feel like I used to have all the tools. Like whether that was real or not, I felt like it was. So that's how I feel.
Which is why Let's Talk exists. So you're forced to talk to people and look at them, which is very uncomfortable when you look at your phone and computer a lot. I never realized like how weird I was looking at people's eyes. I was like, oh my gosh. Like I feel like you can see through me. I'm lying, or I think that I have noticed that we struggle with like definitely with conversing and being able to have hard conversations about, say, like politics, which seems to be the thing that we all go back to because that's a way sometimes how we identify, or it's part of our identities. And so people are like, I just don't talk about politics, And I, the other day I posted something about, I was like, it's so irritating to not see people speak up about like black children being murdered, and I got all of these white moms in my inbox like, oh, I'm here for you, I just don't talk about this stuff on the internet. And I was like, why? And they're just like, I just don't like conflict. I was like, that must be really nice to opt out of that. And I was like, how about I just leave you with a challenge where you just try posting something, because maybe someone's gonna see it and they fucking needed to see that. Like you not sharing certain things because you don't want to rock the boat, or you're scared your family is gonna like disown you. Like, okay, well, people are being murdered because of their skin color, because of their gender. So I mean, enjoy like your awkward Thanksgiving meals where you have to pretend that you're also a Republican. I hope that's really fun for you. But some of us don't have that like choice or that option. So right there, you're choosing a privilege to stand in. And that's fine, you're afforded that, but it's shitty, and you can't say that you're here for me when you make a choice where you're silent. Because silence is also oppression. But we think of it as I'm not actively, actually physically harming somebody, so I can't really be hurting them. But it's that thing of like how you're saying people can't communicate, where like if someone's getting beat up and people just stand there and they watch and they just hold out their like cell phones because they don't want to get involved, And I don't remember what it's called. It's like called like an actual like that response is called something.
The bystander?
Yeah, where you're just like, and it's a thing where I used to think, oh, I would have done something. I'm like, would I have though? Like, would I have? Or would I have just been like, that's really scary. And I would like to protect myself. And that's the thing, right? Like, we want to protect ourselves. We always are going to do the things where like we can protect ourselves. And it's that unlearning of being like, I actually also have to be compassionate to other people. And I think it goes back to this idea of like humanity. And I think that's what we're like missing and why it's so hard for people to communicate, that we forget that humanity is at the core of everybody. It doesn't really matter like what you fucking believe or like who you are. We have like humanity is that thing that like strips us of all those other things, and that's what we need to come back to. And so it's like you can be nice, but being nice is bullshit to me. Do you notice that like when you like critique someone, you're like, I don't like them and I don't like how they dress, or you're like, but they're nice. You like try to like make it better but it doesn't mean anything. Like when we're taught as children to be nice, it's just like the opposite of just like, don't be mean. But it's like, but why be nice? And so I always tell my kids, I'm like, be kind, because kindness means you have to actually tap into something and you have to actually consider another person. Being kind is not for yourself. I think being nice is, right? You're like, I want to be seen as nice. I want to be seen as someone who doesn't like cause conflict or make trouble. I'm just gonna sit here and be nice. Well, I don't want your niceness. I would like you to shove it and like leave. And Portland is full of nice people. Kindness is great. I love people in New York because they're direct and they can look at you and they'd be like, move. It's not even rude. Just get out of the way. You can't just hang out on the fucking sidewalk in New York. Here, people walk so slowly. And then you get to the fucking crosswalk, and they're like, no, go. To the car, and the car's like, no, you're a fucking pedestrian, go. And they're like, no, go. And then you both go, and then it's like a thing, and then the person's trying so hard to be nice, but really they want to be like, fuck you. Which is what I do when I'm driving, because I'm from LA. And so I'm just like, I don't have time for this. Like, I don't have time. There's not time for that. And so, like, let's not be nice. Let's be kind, because kind comes from being compassionate, and being compassionate means you have to actually consider someone outside of yourself. Like outside of you, not just people you are attached to that are family or you have like a partnership with or your children, like other actual humans. There are a lot of humans that I see and I have judgments and I'm like, ugh, no. And then I have to remind myself, like, you don't know them, Margaret. And I'm like, but I do, I can tell. And it's like, no, you don't. These are conversations I have in my head. For reals. And I always have to come back to this idea of like, humanity reminds me that everyone has a story. And the thing that I teach a lot in photography is like, why is it so often we tell the one story, right? And I can look around this room and I can be like, I know all your stories, like white people, because I've seen them all. I've seen all the movies. They make movies for all of you all the time. And we get like 2 movies a year. And then we complain and we're like, that narrative didn't fit my narrative. And people are like, you should be happy that we let you have 2 movies. And one was a slave movie, because in case you don't remember, that's where you began. And we're like, not really. We began way before that. Okay? And we like go past that. And so, you know, this is like one of the first years where there have been so many different shows that represent Black people that I feel like I have a choice. I don't have to watch them all. I'm like, you like have your like audience there. This like fits me more. Like Insecure is a show where it was the first time I saw a Black girl in LA that was more similar to me than like necessarily from like Compton and like Watts, because that wasn't my story. And I was like, oh my God, there's someone like me. That's amazing. And that's like, that fit my narrative. And I don't think we think about that. That there are so many stories that have been told. Like, I feel like now when I watch a trailer and I see like a white man, I'm just like, oh my God, he's gonna save the day from something stupid. And he's fucking 50 by now, and the girl in the movie is gonna be 20 and really hot, but also somehow really smart. But he's gonna be so mean to her and so sexist. And then there's gonna be like that wise Black person just floating around maybe. And then like their Asian friend that's like really good at computers. I'm like, we get it. And then I go see that movie because, you know, whatever. Because I love movies. And so it's kind of like, why do you guys, like, I'm not gonna like assume that everyone here is just nice. I'm sure a lot of you are really kind to people. But what are your thoughts around like why, because you started saying like you don't have the skills anymore, and I'm sorry, I keep pointing to you. I just keep remembering things that you said, like you don't have the tools anymore, and why do we think that that is? That we struggle to see people outside of ourselves, and not even just outside, but like outside of what looks like ourselves.
I'm super scared of criticism.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that I'm gonna do it wrong. Like,
Yeah.
if I were to have a dialogue with you,
Mm-hmm.
scared I'm gonna offend you and not be nice.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Something
Yeah.
along those lines. So
Mhm.
I think that's really common, but I think a lot of people don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
I agree. I think there's a tremendous amount of fear
Mhm.
of being criticized or getting it wrong. And yeah, and then there's the internet, which has allowed us much more than we ever used to hide,
Mhm.
you know. I mean, I don't think it's all the internet's fault, but I think that it plays a big part in our devices. It's just an easy thing to hide behind.
It's just easier in general to be nice. You don't have, like, it's work to be kind and
Mhm.
compassionate, but people tend to take the path of least resistance, and it's just a lot easier to avoid conflict.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
So many hippies that do yoga. I'm just so enlightened I can't talk about race. It's just like my favorite. I was that person. So I can say that. I was thinking about the criticism thing. So my kids are really great about my pronouns, which are they, them. But sometimes they'll have a slip up and it's really cute because they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, and they'll just switch right away and it's not even a thing. They don't even care if I'm going to be like, hey, that like hurt my feelings. They totally take that like criticism. And they're like, yeah, I fucked up. I should own that shit. Which is like, I try to let people know. So I noticed like one of the reasons why we get scared of being criticized is when we don't really know somebody well, it's hard to have conflicts because we don't know how they're going to respond. And I think a lot of us haven't been taught how to have conflict well. We get anxious, we get nervous. Any critique makes us be like, oh my god, it's an attack on my character, I suck. And we're really dramatic. And I learned this in like my couples therapy with my ex-husband, when we learned like we didn't do it. We would come to these conflicts and we would never validate each other and we would just get so hurt. And the therapist pointed out, like, you know, you realize that like you're really just critiquing, you should be just critiquing like your partner's actions or the words that they said, not necessarily like their character, and you have to not take it so personally. And we do when someone's like, hey, you did a thing that hurt me, people are like, oh my god, I'm the worst human. I used to do that. Like, I'm very dramatic. I was very dramatic as a child, and if my mom ever got mad at me, I was like, oh my god, I'm the worst child that's ever existed. It was so stupid. And I find myself still doing it sometimes. I'm like, everybody hates me because I did this one thing. And I have to remember that, one, no one cares that much about me. You know, they really don't. And two, they took time to let me know how they felt because I hurt them or I did something that was wrong. That's trusting somebody. So like me coming into this space and having this conversation is me trusting you all to hear me, to hear what I'm saying and not to go home and like cry. I mean, you can cry too, that's cool. Crying is really healthy and we should all do it all the time. But I'm trusting you to hear what I'm saying and then to reflect and be like, cool, how can I be better at this thing? It's not me being like, you're all garbage people. And maybe you are. Sometimes I'm a garbage person. I'm not making assumptions. But it's that thing of like, cool, what actions have I done that can be harmful? I say shitty things all the time. And then I'm like, ooh, yeah. And then I have to go apologize. And it's that practicing of like owning up to the shit that you know that you said and not pretending like you didn't say it. Not just being like, okay, we're just gonna move on, right? It's being like, hey, I said a really shitty thing, I'm sorry. And it's uncomfortable at first because we, I think, are encouraged to just stay in our comfort zone. We're encouraged to find your people, stay there, do not move, do not really grow, but that seems like a really pointless life, right? Like that just seems like, what's the point of that? How do you make change? How do you help anybody? How do you help your fucking self if you're just staying? And my thing with myself is always being uncomfortable. Never getting like too comfortable. And I thought that I did a great job of like being uncomfortable around here, and I had to go to like Tennessee and I was at a workshop, and I was like, oh my God, I have not been around this many straight people in like so long, and everyone was white and married, and I was like, this is weird, and very monogamous, and I'm like not any of those things, and I was also like drinking the most. No, and they were like, oh, the Bible and stuff, which is fine. I was a Christian too, but I was like, I am so uncomfortable. I was like, I'm not gonna make friends here. Oh my God. And I made friends, and you know, I found like the queer people like I do, and just like people who were not even that bad. They were straight and they were fine. Straight people are totally fine too, you guys. But these are the thoughts that I had, and I was like, that's so interesting. I thought that I had been challenging myself and that I was being uncomfortable a lot. And it was a really big learning experience where like I usually feel like I can just get comfortable anywhere I am. And I was so uncomfortable. And I was like cringing at like everything people said. And I was like, ugh, and I was like wanted to flip tables. And I was like, that's not what you're here for. You're here to teach people things. You don't need to like correct them on everything. But I realized like I have to keep doing that in order to always be bettering myself and helping other people tell their stories that might not be told. And that was like the thing that was the most surprising. People that I definitely pegged as like, this is who you are and this is who you are, were like, this is actually who I am. I was like, what? And then I felt shitty because I was like, damn it, I just did that thing that I try not to do because I just made an assumption about you. And so I try to do that here in Portland. I feel like Portland, there's like 5 types of people, so it's kind of easy to like peg people here.
Sounds like a book.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that book after I leave Portland, though. No, I'm still here. But I think that we are definitely lacking in a lot of things. Like our communication skills are really shitty. I'm shocked when I'm like in conversations with other adults, or just like trying to have like a kind breakup with someone, and they freak out over me being like, hey, there's not enough time, so we obviously probably shouldn't be dating right now. They're like, oh my God, you hate me, or you're asking too much. I'm like, no, I'm just saying, let's just call it, it's good, I don't hate you. We can do these things. Or if I have like a conflict with a friend, I'm like, let's sit down and have a conversation. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, that's what we can do, that we're adults. We get to do this shit and stay friends after. Like, we get to talk through it, and you get to hear me, and I get to hear you. Isn't that rad? Isn't that so cool? And I was thinking about maybe it's like, it starts when we're really young in some ways. Like, I notice with my kids, I'll just be like, apologize. Like, don't even talk about your conflict. I'm just like so overhearing them shout at each other. And I'm like, oh God. I'm already like conditioning them to have this thing of like doing that like fake apology type thing when you don't even mean it because you don't understand what you're even apologizing. And I'm like, God damn it, now I have to like reteach them how to talk about this stuff. And like, and the adults. And so, yeah, I think that like, I love texting, I love emailing, I love Facebook. I live on the internet, okay? I love the internet, I'm not gonna lie. I like communicate on it all the time. But for every time I'm communicating on it, I'm like, have to check myself for how I communicate in person. So my policy is however I talk on the internet is how I'm gonna speak to people in real life. So a lot of times I'll like, people think I'm shouting because I don't put happy faces after everything. And people, it's that uncomfortable thing. They're like, oh my God, she hates me, or they hate me. And I'm like, because I didn't put a happy face? You weren't even sitting, you don't know what my tone was. You know exactly how I talk. Why are you assuming that? And so how I talk on the internet is how I would talk to you all in real life. So if I call someone out on the internet, it's the same thing I would say in real life. Like, I'm not more brave on the internet. You know, like that's just like my policy. It doesn't have to be your policy. You don't have to be like me. I don't have to be shouting at people all the time and being frustrated, you know. I also have like calm conversations like this all the time too. But I think that there are ways that we can like work on our communicating, and it can always be better with like everybody. It's not just like people who look different than us or are different. It can be honestly the people that you're closest to too. So what skills should we add to our tool belt?
So I have a question about like when we want to change or shift the the people that we're around.
Mm-hmm.
If we noticed that the groups we're organizing in, and politically and spiritually, are all mostly white, but we, you know, we of course benefited from their support. But like, I guess the question is like, do we start from ground zero and just instead of continuing with a group that's all white, just kind of try to find other pockets of people to connect with, the people of color?
Yeah, I think that you already have this like group of numbers, and so it's like, how do you take those numbers to support the people of color who are doing things? I think that's what it is, and I think that sometimes white people are like, we started such an amazing thing. Other people of color would love to be a part of this. They should be a part of it, and don't reinvent anything. There's already so much like happening here that it's like, do your research, gather your people, and then give your support somewhere, because that also is like really important, is those like numbers. And it's that like, I think that that's why some groups struggle, is, you know, they have their like 10 consistent people, but there's no one that's really there like helping or supporting, which is why I try to constantly, when people are like, I don't know what to do, I want to give money somewhere, I'm like, here's a group, here's a group, here's a group. There's always somebody. And so I think you don't have to start over. You just have to take who you have and attach yourself somewhere in some way. And it might be really in the background, and just showing up and be like, how do we help? What can we give? Because you all will have resources that matter and that are like needed. I have like an ongoing resource list of different people in town, so that when people contact me, I'm like, cool, we have that. Like, let me connect you to this person. And it's that thing of like going back to being community minded and being compassionate and being kind and humanity. That when you start to think that way, then everything is going to grow into this larger community, right? It's not going to be like, I'm here and this person is here. It's like, oh, you're a person who needs help. This is what I can contribute. And like, I feel like I think that's like ultimately what people have to get back to, is not, it's like, yeah, people are other, right? People are marginalized. And you have to recognize that and like validate that stuff. You have to see it. You can't pretend that you don't see it. You cannot say that you're equal, because we aren't equal. That's just like not a reality. And you have to accept it. Just fucking accept it. Just accept it already. Stop trying to be like, but. Just be like, oh my God, yeah, society is built for me as a cis white male, and then the cis white female, and then whatever white follows, and then people of color. Just accept. Okay, sorry.
What's cis?
It's like, oh, cis. Okay. So you identify as a male, and you were assigned male at birth, and that's what you identify. Like, that's who you like feel that you are. So you would be a cis male.
Okay.
So yeah, is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh my God, I do that thing where I just talk in these words.
I kind of knew a little bit, but I just felt like.
Good. No, that's good. If you don't know, if I'm just like saying things, sometimes I make up words too. Just be like, that's not. Margaret, help us. Okay, yes.
I wanted to say, you asked what things can we add to our tool belt. I was going to say personal accountability, and the other one was awareness.
Yes.
Awareness of self-awareness, because I see a lot of that lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. I feel like, does anyone remember when you became like self-aware as a kid? Because I remember what I was doing and like where I was. That was the first time I became extremely self-aware, and then a few years ago, I became also self-aware and being like, oh my God, there's so much outside of me. Aside from my children, they're always outside of me. Those are the people that I'm concerned with the most. But I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much outside of me. I am so responsible for everything that I do, for the words that I say, for what I'm thinking, for how I act, and checking myself. And I notice people navigating where it's not even like a thought. I was like, how do you live like that? It seems freeing. You know, it seems like you're just a free spirit just like floating through. But yeah, do you guys believe you're like pretty self-aware people? It's also fine if you say no. No one's gonna shame you. This is a safe space. Or could you work on it more?
How do you know if you're self-aware?
I have no idea.
How do you know when you don't know?
I think that, one, I do believe, I guess, you wouldn't really know, because it would be a thing that crossed your mind, huh? Someone said?
I said that's right.
Yeah, but I think you being here, you're pretty self-aware of things that you probably want to work on, or at least learn. And that you've thought about some of this stuff, you know, you've allowed yourself, because we can stop ourselves, we can be like, that's too much, I would rather not think about it. And so, I think that you're self-aware, pretty self-aware. I mean, I feel like we could all be more self-aware, but like, don't be bothered by that, you know, just day at a time, yes.
I was just going to say that in terms of the toolbox, the willingness to be really uncomfortable, I think, is big, because for, at least for me as a white person, that that's where I've made the most progress, I think, in my own awareness and accountability, is putting myself in situations where I am uncomfortable and being willing to kind of wrestle with things that where maybe I do feel like, oh my God, you know, I can't believe I did this, I said this awful thing, or whatever, or processing with someone about what happened, and or being uncomfortable in challenging someone else. Anyway, so I just think that's for me.
I hope we're making note of what's in our toolbox now.
What's that?
No, I'm just like, I'm making note of it in my head. I'm like, hey, we're adding to our toolbox, but I was just reminding everyone else. So.
Yeah, I just think for me anyway, that's been a big part of my evolution down a long road that I'm on, of awareness and other stuff. It's just being comfortable.
I was hearing you sort of go up, and then I was like, did you change your mind?
No, I just I'm trying to become more aware of different things. I can say that. There's a lot that I don't know. But I'm also becoming more aware of how filtered everything is.
Yeah.
And as creatives, you know, designers, photographers, we filter the shit out of everything. So it's like there's that constant, you know, like struggle with filtering things and, you know, getting the meaning and purpose out of them, and then actually seeing what's happening in real life. And that's a tension that I think is not going to go away. We have to kind of, I don't know, figure it apart still. But
Yeah. Everything is super filtered. I think that can be something that we forget, especially like via like social media and stuff. Like, we forget that we see a limited view of things, and that things are, as a photographer, you know, I'm gonna edit things to look nice. Like, I can take a picture literally of anything and make it look really appealing, and people are like, oh my God, I love that pile of wood. It's so amazing. But like, you don't see the other like side of it. And that thing of filtered things, right, is like when we thought we saw this like surge in black murders, but it's never stopped, is the reality. It's just the news that we were presented with would give us a certain view, because that stuff was controlled by the people who have more power. And so I feel like I grew up with parents that were like, racism is not dead, but I was like, I think it's dead, because we lived around a lot of white people and my friends were white, and I was like, so obviously it's dead. They're not trying to lynch me, so, you know, but that's still not understanding microaggressions and being uncomfortable, and just realizing that we've all been shown, especially on this side of the country, like a different reality that isn't even real. And then I've spent the last years of dismantling a lot of stuff, and then when Trump was elected, I felt nothing. I was just like, well, that's what you get, white. Like, I genuinely was like, that's what you get, because you all thought that everything was fine. And we tried to like tell you so many times, as we were dying in the street, as we were like protesting, that this is not normal. There's something wrong. There's always been something wrong. And now everyone's like, people are being deported. And it's like, no, actually they were always being deported. They've been being deported like for years. And we just now notice. And there was this thing of having people, finally white people, be like, oh my God, everything you were saying, shouting at me was true, Margaret, because now they were feeling it. Now they felt afraid. And they still won't be the first people who are affected by things that Trump does. It will always be us. And so it was that thing of like, good, I want you to feel like afraid. I remember I like did an interview in like the Willamette week, and this man was so mad at me because I chose not to vote, because I was like, it's within my rights, and I don't want to vote for two white people, like between two white people who I think are both oppressors. That's the reality for me, is it may seem like a lesser evil for the, you know, average like white person, but it's not like that for me. And you getting mad at me because you have to be uncomfortable now and address things, again, not on me. But this man wrote out this comment where he's like, you obviously don't care about like gay people or black people or, and I was like, I've been caring about it. It's weird that you just, like, he literally had said, I now understand why it's important to care about those things. And I was like, good for you, but I already have been doing it. That's literally what I do every day. So you do not have the right to come in here and tell me how to be or how to treat this. I didn't vote for Trump. This country did. White America did. America is white. And that's really shitty and it's really scary, but also like, let's learn the right history, right? This land was colonized. It was taken. And we teach our kids that people discovered this land. White people don't discover anything. They literally just rediscover things and repackage it. And then they're like, look at this thing I gave you. And you're like, no, this ramen shouldn't be $15. It's a fucking street food. Gumbo is food that was made from scraps. You know, you do not get to take it and be like, I'm adding my white person spin to this food that has lots of seasonings, and add no seasonings, because I feel like that's what white people food tastes like, just no seasoning. Salt is not a seasoning. It's not enough. It takes so much more. And Portland is that. Portland has done a really great job of taking things and repackaging it and presenting the city. Like when I came here, I was like, it's such a clean place. Like, you know, in LA, it's like grimy, it's nice, it's cool. But then you're like, you walk down the street and you're like, but this is so weird though. It's weird. Does anyone else think Portland's kind of weird? And like the makeup of the city and just like everything is starting to like look the same. They've like torn down everything. They've taken away like neighborhood bars. It just doesn't feel real. And they're trying to like control this like narrative and are you raising your hand? Sorry.
No. I wanted you to finish. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I think the thing that makes me really sad and stresses me out is the stories that are just going with the change that I hear from Black people constantly. When I first moved here, I tried to do a project of documenting all the places where all the old jazz clubs were. And I just posted on Craigslist, and I had a lot of emails from people who've lived here forever, and they're like, my parents played with all of these people. I have these tapes, I have these pictures. And I was like, nobody knows though. When I go to other cities, we know about all of the things, right? Like every city that I go to, there is a hub, and there are places where it's like, this is where so-and-so. Here in Portland, we just don't know anymore. People are shocked. They're like, what? Black people were here? It's like, yeah, they migrated from the South. That's what they did. People are like, I didn't know, I thought it was just a white state. And it was like, yeah, I mean, white people think everything is just theirs, right? But like Black people could be here too, and Native people were here. There's so many different types of people, we just like don't know. And it makes me sad because I'm like, there's so many storytellers here. Why aren't we telling these stories? Because they're not gonna pay us money, you know, Nike's gonna pay us money, and Wyden's gonna give us money, and Intel, so we are gonna do that shit. And what I'm gonna tell you guys as like, creatives is what I told all the photographers that I just worked with is like, I know for me as a freelancer, I have a lot of free time. Like I have like weird hours. I do a lot of stuff, but I have time to donate, to work on shit, to document like narratives and stories that I don't normally get to see. So like right now I'm working with non-binary people and like single moms and trying to photograph them because those stories don't get told. And so it's kind of like, what are you also doing to contribute? Like I love this city and I hate it, but I love it so much that I want to stay, and I want to make sure that like all of the Black people that came before me have their stories told. And you know, there's like a history book that was shelved, written by a Black woman here, about like, and it talks about the history here, and they were like, no, we're not putting that in our schools. They can just learn the normal American history. And there's just like a whole thing, yeah.
There's a reason why, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that move here really don't understand what Oregon's history is like. And I really wish that there was more availability or a more conscious effort to learn the history. It's not good.
Yeah.
We're talking about race.
They have some schools that are starting now to have in a school I help teach at sometimes. They have a whole unit that focuses on American civil rights and then focuses on Portland civil rights. And those kids know so much more than like most adults know about Portland. They walk around, they make maps, they give presentations about it. They have people coming in who were a part of Vanport and stuff. And it's people like that who are like, cool, I'm gonna just add this in to what they're already learning. Because yeah, a lot of, like I go and I speak to a lot of Black and brown kids, and they don't even know about all the people who've done great things in Portland, who they come from. Because the only thing that they're shown on like career days and the only teachers they have are just like white adults. And so it's like, how are we all going to like contribute to that? That's also a way to disrupt things, is using our skills and our talents to like tell stories, to document things, to archive what's happening. We have to be archiving. Because if we don't do it, it will just get lost. And Portland will have this weird history where we're told that the cops tried really hard, to work with protesters, but they just kept throwing Pepsi cans and like breaking windows. And apparently it's so much worse to break a window than for a cop to beat a person when children are around. Because property is so much more valuable than like we are. Your hand was up, Susan.
So at the last Let's Talk gathering, if you don't mind me sharing, you mentioned that your experience of going to a museum, I believe, down
the Civil Rights Museum.
Right. And you can share your experience, but my thoughts when you said that and we didn't have an opportunity to talk about it was, it kind of fits in with what we're saying about our history here, is that, the Oregon Historical Society has done work, but they usually have they'll have a show up for a while. But to me, when you said, kind of described how it moved you and your experience of that, it was like, well, that's something we could work on. I mean, maybe we need to really say, you need to have the main exhibit.
Yeah.
Right? And because that becomes a place where people can go and see those stories in a permanent way. And so that was just my idea.
Well, Walida Imarisha, she did that, Why Aren't There More Black People in Oregon? She did this whole timeline, and I first saw that a number of years ago at Multnomah County Library, and afterwards, I'm a school teacher, and afterwards I asked her if I could use this timeline. And she emailed it to me and said, spread it far and wide. So that's a document that's already put together that people can take, and she seems fine with, credit where credit is due, but people using that and passing it along. So I have passed it along to other teachers and used it, and so I just,
that's a good resource to start from. I guess, one of the things that struck me when you were talking about being in a museum, and I was just recently in Boston, and I went to the African American Museum there, and just being in a physical, three-dimensional presence of photographs of items and stories can really be can really give some context, I guess, or give some dimensionality to the experience.
It's just what I like creating, being like a creative artist is really important to be creating based on like what's happening, because it does help people like respond in a certain way. You know, if we don't really see it, it's going to be hard for us to process or hold or understand. I think I've noticed something too, is it's easy for us to be outraged about what's happening outside of Oregon because you're not really there. You like read things and you saw some images, right? And there's a lot happening here, like a lot of terrible things that people don't even really know. And so it's kind of also like, how are you showing up like in the community, and are you trying to plug in, or are you, and it goes back to the choice. Yeah.
No,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I want to raise my hand, but like after you're done. Sorry.
I realized, I was like, oh my god, I didn't go back. Oh my god, this just talks so much
You're like halfway
sometimes.
through your point. I think.
Oh no, and so Let's Talk is in a few different cities, and I always tell them like, you need to focus on what's going on in your city. This isn't necessarily about like what's going on overall, because we all are aware, but there's always stuff going on in our city. So like right now, in like the Davis Douglas School District, is that where it is? There's a lot of stuff happening where I was actually shocked at how little like response it got when there are Black and brown children taking time to explain the racism that they're experiencing, and having white people on the board be like, this is a waste of our time. And children shouldn't have to be advocating for themselves, especially Black and brown children. They shouldn't have to, but that's how early it starts. It starts so early. And so I keep talking about it because I'm like, I didn't know even, and I like to think that I'm pretty in the know about a lot of things. And then there's always little things just like happening, and I'm like, God, I have to make sure that I'm still having conversations and I'm not just settled into like the community that I'm in, because there's always stuff outside of where I am in my community, and I get comfortable, right? Like I've built my community around me, and it's that thing where you were saying, instead of starting from like ground zero and you have this group of people, that's a way like you show up for those kinds of people. You show up when people have their like court dates. You show up, we just did a sit-in for police reform in City Hall. Showing up for those things when moms who have like had their children murdered in Portland, they shouldn't have to be doing it. And that's the thing that breaks my heart the most. There are so many moms who are still fighting to just have these deaths be validated. They should be mourning like any other parent who loses a child. They shouldn't be down at City Hall every day begging our stupid mayor to hear them, and begging our cops to not just murder our Black boys, to let them also screw up and just like, you know, just arrest them. You do not have to execute them because you were scared, because our society has told you that like somehow if you're Black and brown and you're a tall man that you're threatening. And it makes me kind of laugh because I'm like, who are all our serial killers? They are white men. They're nice white men, which is another reason why we don't like nice. You run away from nice white men. You're just like, this is not a safe situation. And this idea that the only people that can harm you are these like, you know, my son is really tall for his age. He's very skinny and tiny, but he's changing and he's getting bigger, and I get really anxious and stressed out because everyone's like, he's so cute and he's so handsome. And I'm like, but what are you gonna say when he's taller than you? And he's walking down the street just minding his business, just taking a fucking walk. And I saw a Black boy just walking across the street today with his hood on, and I was like, oh my God, please don't have your hood on. Oh my God, please, you know? And I just like wanted to get out and like hug him, and he would have been like, oh my God, this crazy person is touching me. But like, I'm like, who's gonna protect you? Because everyone has this like natural, I don't know, like I did it too, where if I saw like a group of Black men, I would get uncomfortable and like maybe cross the street, and now I'm just like, I actually feel safer, and I'm like, I just walk through you. If I see a group of white men, I'm like, nope. We will cross the street right here. They look really scary. And it's like trying to unlearn those conditionings that we have. Like I get attributed a lot of times that I'm angry because I fit into this idea of like a Black woman and my hair is natural, and I'm like, yay, fighting the fight, and people are like, you need to be chill. And I'm like, I'm actually a very chill person. Like, I am chill as fuck. But it's that thing, they just like apply those stereotypes to people of color, and I think that's really unfair because I feel like with white people, we're just expected, they're like, I'm different, look how different I am. And I'm expected to always give every white person a chance. And then with people of color, they're just like, well, we know your story, even though they don't. I saw your hand, sorry.
Oh, I'll just say that it's a great person. The between the world and me thing.
Yes.
I think quotes make a huge difference in that, like seeing black men as scary versus empathetic.
What was it?
So
Can you say
between the world and me, that shifted something inside me, which I'm really grateful for. I just wanted to share that.
No, that's really important.
The books for me
You can put that also
are
in
super helpful.
your toolbox. Do some reading.
And so another book that I read that I found helpful was Homegoing.
What was it? Sorry.
Homegoing.
Oh, yes.
It just really helped me imagine slavery from a really different perspective.
And
You have other
Jim
books
Crow.
Yes. Anyone else reading anything? You keep
I was
raising
going to
your
say one more book, just why are all the black kids sitting together in the cafeteria?
Mhm.
It's actually changed 3 times. So like every time I go to ask something or say something, it's like it's said. So it's kind of awesome. But there's 2 things that I wanted to say. One, those are just statements pretty much. But like one, white dude. Like I just like want to make this a statement, and I think it happens to like most of like my friends and anybody, even if you're black or I don't even know, but like I get outraged in an abstract way about like people having their rights like stepped on, like Native or black or whatever. I get really outraged in this really abstract way, and then in the actual like situations I have to resist the urge. It's kind of like what you were saying, like cross the street, I have to resist the urge to be like, whoa, you know, like literally, it's just literally, it's like instinctual. I'm like, whoa, that white guy is in an argument with that black guy, and like, like I literally want to protect the white guy, and it's not, it has nothing to do with logic, it has nothing to do with anything, it has like familiarity, being comfortable, I don't even know. But that's just one statement, like, and I think that that's pervasive, like, whatever background you're from, I think. And then the other thing is, like, I just want to say as a statement, like, my little brother has gotten out of 2 DUIs in the last year. He's 21 years old. He's been, like, a total shithead to the cop both times. Like, mouth off, like, and I cannot express to him how lucky he is. There's no words I have. And you know, he's partly because he's 21, but it's so frustrating. And I wish he was here today. I wish he could talk to you, or just I don't know. He's, you know, my parents moved out to Scappoose, so he's even more isolated than in Portland. And so it's like, it's just super, super frustrating. I feel like there's this huge gulf, and like everybody, it's depressing. Like depressing in the way that I think everybody is depressed about Trump, at least that's white. I don't even know, but like it's just super depressing, and I feel it's so pervasive right now, and like there's just so just statements. It's just like
It's super frustrating. I mean, I spend a lot of my times and days getting really angry at people because I'm like, you don't even know. Why are you whining about that stupid thing? Like, you have it so easy. And just also in that refusal to listen or be like, yeah, I do actually hold some privileges. Like today I made a statement where I was like, I'm done protecting white women, because I think as a society we do that. We cater and protect what is we consider like innocent and pure and soft. And white feminism is just that. And so it's the things where we watch black and brown, like femme and like women come up and say these things, and people are like, you need to sit down and calm down. And the minute like a soft like white woman comes up and says it, it's like, oh, she's so edgy and she's standing up for things. It's so impressive. And I'm like, I'm done like catering to that idea. And I did go to the Civil Rights Museum, and what was interesting is like in every movement, no matter what decade it was, women were like leading it, Black women, and they've never not led. And so feminism is interesting because feminism in America and commercialized feminism is definitely white. It accommodates white. Because Black feminism, Black womanism is so different. And I noticed in a conversation today with somebody, and I was trying to be like, this person is a really harmful person, right? They have really bad habits. I don't feel like they're a safe person for people to be interacting with. And someone's like, but she's really nice and she's trying. And I'm like, I'm literally so sick of white women trying. Because when I'm trying, I might just be shot dead or just be told that like I'm not good enough. And I have to watch white women get chance after chance. And it's like, oh, she's so cute and she's quirky. And I'm like, oh my God, she's not even that quirky. Wearing polka dots isn't quirky. Sorry, I'm definitely like thinking of Zooey Deschanel. Definitely went through a phase. I really loved her. And then I was like, wait, no. But there's that thing, and that's when I have to constantly be like, we're not equal. Because when I say those things and I do those things, then I get seen a certain way. And I'm violent and I'm bad, but when a white woman does it, we make excuses. Or for instance, a white boy, like, and my kids aren't gonna get those chances. I don't actually, like, I've been pulled over so many times, and I feel like I just code switched my way out of there. And that's like a coping, like, defense mechanism of knowing how to speak white. I know how to move through a room of white people so well, better than white people do, because I know you all so much better, because I have to survive. But you never bother to know what my experience is like. And when I tell you, you tell me it's wrong, as if you know, but you don't know, because you didn't listen to me. But I listen to everything you all say. I watch the movies, I read the books. That's what I've been fed. I was told so early on that like my beauty, my brilliance doesn't even matter, because the mediocre white person will always be chosen and will be best. And I was always taught I have to do 10 times as much just to even stay at someone's heels. Which is why we celebrate each other anytime anybody does anything. Even if you don't even like that person, you're just like, yes, you did it. Because it's hard. And it's weird to tell your children, your sweet children, that they have to try harder and that people see them a certain way. And my kids are 7 and 8, they're babies, right? They don't know, they're good people. They're fucking good people. They're brilliant. They know how to have a conversation with adults about anything in ways that white children could never do it. And when my daughter sees a cop, she panics. And if she sees a cop and I'm walking down the street, she stands between me and that cop because she gets scared. And it's not fair. This shouldn't be her reality or my son's reality. It's that thing where he's like, I wish I could play with fake guns, but he doesn't get to. Right? He doesn't get to do stupid little boy things because I'm like, someone's gonna get scared. A white woman is going to get scared of you playing, of you being a child, because they can't even perceive you as a child, because they only perceive you as scary. And somehow their children have to be coddled and kept away from what is scary, what is different. And then later on, they wonder why they can't navigate the world. And it's not fair, and we're not equal, which is why I push back on conversations about being inclusive or equality, because equity is really what we need, right? And it's when white people need to start giving up space and giving more. Not just making a little bit of space and staying at the top where they are, it's stepping down because you already have been there. The world is built around you and for you. It runs like it. You literally get to be born and you get set on a track. And it doesn't matter how many times you fuck up, you could still somehow end up in college and run a company. But like we go to school and we get our braids cut off and we get told that like that's bad and we get expelled. I didn't even go to school, I was homeschooled, you guys. But I've been thinking about this, and my daughter was talking about people touching her hair and the teacher touching her hair. And I get in arguments about white dreads and why I get really angry about white people having dreads, because they get to hold office jobs with dreads, but when we come in with our braids, we're told they're not professional. And capitalism and our existence are so tied together because it was literally created to keep us down. So I went to the South, I loved it. White people saw me there. Even if they didn't want me there, they saw me. Here, people don't see me. And I would rather choose the South at this point in my life over being here, over being in liberal Portland, because being in liberal Portland doesn't mean anything. It hasn't bettered anything. If anything, it's removed my people and has made them suffer so much mental bullshit. The shit that happens to your head when you encounter microaggressions and you don't see a black or brown person for days, and you try to confide in your white friends, and your white friends are like, that doesn't sound really bad, and you're like, am I crazy? I think I'm crazy. And then you finally see a person who looks like you, and they're like, you're not crazy. And my favorite thing about being, when I go to the South or back home to LA or in New York, is I never not see people like me, and they have my back. So if anything happens, I'm like, I'm good. Here I panic in all white spaces. I'm like, if someone hurts me, are they all gonna sit there and just be like, oh, I don't wanna be involved because I'm a nice person? Or is somebody gonna stand up? And I can, out of all the times I've had really shitty things happen, I can say 2 of my white friends have ever stepped between me and a person, say touching me or just verbally attacking me. Only 2. And then other people have been like, that looked really uncomfortable. I'm so sorry. And they're just like, why didn't you do something? Because I would have done it for you. Why does my existence here in this place that you're all so proud of have to be hard while you have it easy because you fucking recycle? You know? I mean, which is good, we don't have plastic bags here. It's very impressive. But if stuff like that can happen, why aren't we showing up for the moms who have lost their children, or the moms who have black and brown children in school right now and they're suffering? And a lot of the white moms who go to those meetings are like, why can't we calm down and just speak, calmly with you? Because that doesn't work. And when your kids' lives are being threatened, do you think that we should be calm? Never tell somebody to calm down when they are panicking because they feel afraid and they feel threatened. That's so degrading. That's so fucked up. It's cruel and it hurts people. I believe that Portland is so capable because I believe in the people that I get to meet and have conversations with. I believe that there's a lot of possibility. It just comes down to making a fucking choice every day. And it's hard. It takes so much self-awareness and being conscious and the disrupting. And it is a constant job. It is active. I don't use the word ally anymore, really, with people, because I think that when you're an ally, you get to opt in and out, right? That's your role. You're an ally, you get to show up when you want, you get to, and I'm like, you can be an accomplice, I guess, a comrade, or just be a fucking decent human, Just be a decent person. Do not be a piece of shit. And I consider anyone a piece of shit who consciously chooses every fucking day to be silent and to not show up. With Let's Talk, it's it's not a huge commitment. It's twice a month. And there will always be shit, right? We'll always be fucking tired from work. And we'll always have relationship issues and conflicts and children. But life also goes on outside of that. There will also still be black and brown people dying. Yes.
How do I find out about the Let's Talk meetings? I've never heard of, I mean, and
Yeah.
I came to this
It
because I
is.
knew about you and had read, but I never heard of Let's Talk.
It's on Facebook. It's just Let's
Okay.
Talk PDX.
And so it's twice a month, and is it how?
It's like
twice
every
a
other.
particular
Right
place,
now we
or-
have a meeting at Grant Park Church, and then we might switch back to meeting at Pica, but at their new location in Northeast. And we used to meet downtown.
Facebook page.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, yeah, people are always posting things there and letting people know about things that are going on and ways to be involved. I think it's a good thing. It's a good way to be connected and find like-minded people who are also trying really hard to like work on things. Yeah.
Is it okay to show up at Let's Talk really tired from work and
Yeah.
not talk, but
Yeah.
just show up?
Well, sometimes it's good just to listen to.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, we're gonna do work and stuff, but also a lot of people sometimes just show up. And I think that is just part of it, is getting into this like habit and unlearning things and unlearning that like, Portland's a flaky city too. When I moved here, because in LA it just wasn't like that, but when I moved here, people would be like, we're gonna do this project, we're gonna meet this day, and I was always ready, and I was like, we're doing it, and people were like, I'm going to the river instead, and I was like, what? You know, because you know, when it's a sunny day in Portland, you freak out, you want to go to the fucking river. I did it last week. I was like, we're not doing anything today, we're going to the river. But it kept happening, and I was like, why is everyone so flaky here? But it's that laid back, just like, no. It's that just lack of like being able to be a good person here. And Let's Talk was the thing that sometimes I did it and sometimes I didn't. And I was like, it's cool. But now it's like, I'm like, you have to keep doing it and you have to get into that habit. You have to start, it's that like rethinking. You have to condition yourself in a new way to have these conversations, but you have to go past the conversations, right? Like, I used to just go to parties and it was really impressive to be like, oh, I read this book and now I understand racism and I'm so enlightened and I'm going to keep drinking and whatever. Never actually act on these things, but be impressed with how much I know. That's like, great. Now what are you gonna do? Apply, apply, apply. Always be learning, which we do in Let's Talk, and then apply, which is also encouraged in Let's Talk. And outside, like if you are my friend on Facebook, you have to just be subject to my very obnoxious like status updates about race, about Portland, also about my plants. That's another thing I talk a lot about. If you want to join a plant group, I also run that. So to just, you know, I need the balance. I need to like do something that's relaxing and nice. But I believe in people, and I believe that all of you being here today, you're also fucking capable to do shit. Like you all are. I don't know all the things that you do, but I imagine that you're in different fields where you can speak up and you can do something. Anything. You know, anything helps. And once you do that little bit, then you want to do more, and then you're going to do more, and you're going to do more. And you're going to talk to other people, and then they're going to do more.
That's right.
Yeah, you got to, we're a community. Yes.
I just want to say thank you to you for expending all this emotional labor and like really relaying all this information to us, taking that time out of your day, out of your life, away from your family. Like I really appreciate how much work you're putting in to all of these people sitting here listening.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for being here. I think it's like a good place to like wrap it up. It's getting really heavy. I'm like sweating with these lights. Or I'm just sweating. I don't know. Huh? Yeah.
May I just take a moment to put a plug in? You mentioned the David Douglas School.
Yes,
And
please.
applying. So Thursday night, 7 p.m. is the board meeting. And so there are people that have put in some appeals about this. One board member, Bryce Anderson, I think is his name. And so there's hope that that will be discussed. And there's students that we talked about will be there. So I don't have the address in my head. It's, I think there's something listed on the Let's Talk.
Can we also like, did a bunch of people RSVP to the event tonight? because we could also post a link there.
Oh,
So it
yeah,
could be
I'll do
really
that.
accessible
I'll
for
do that.
people to
I'll
find.
do that. So I would encourage you to support, because young people are out there doing it, and
Yeah.
you know, the least we can do is just to even, again, be there. You don't have to talk, you just have to be there and be in support of, you know, challenging a person who should be removed from that sport. And the other thing, I'll just plug in by this, there, of course, everyone I'm sure is either already voted or could be voting soon, but don't forget to do that. There are a lot of school board positions open, and that's significant because these are our young people. So thank you for giving me that little plug time.
Like, does anyone else have one that they want to do? All right, good. Break. Is that good? Oh, am I allowed to be like, it's over now? I forgot to ask about time.
All right, everybody, thanks so much for coming. We return on May 23rd with Jack Harris, proprietor and brewer at Port George Brewery, with his talk, A Secret History of Beer. For more information, you can check out our website, which is curiosityclub.handisupply.com. And we have social media pages, so you can find us there. Let's have another round of applause, Margaret. Thanks, everybody. There's still some beers if you want to hang out for a little bit. I'd like to.